Bundy's Garage, Bundy here. I'm with Darren Carlson, the owner of Direct Truck and Auto Repair in San Bernardino, California. This is a follow-up video to the video that we did. I think it's been a year almost since I interviewed you first time. But yeah, this is just a follow-up. Some of the more popular stuff we talked about was the Ford, Dodge, Chevy shootout that everybody
a lot of
talks about.
Yeah.
Like always, I'm going to break this up into a lot of smaller videos, but in the description below, I will put the topics that we're talking about so you guys can jump ahead if you want. And Darren is a sign that says, do it right, no excuses, no apologies, Direct Truck and Diesel Repair. Where did that come from?
I think what it came from is I would always tell the guys, do it right? Just do it right. I don't care how you're doing it, just do it right. You know, don't make any excuses. And then what I realized is when I would have to tell them, do it right, no excuses, because what I realized is when they started making excuses, I had to start making apologies.
To customers?
Yeah, like say a guy doesn't do something right, then I'm like, hey, what happened? And then he comes back to me and he's like, well, this and that, and you can hear the excuses starting to flow. Now I'm gonna have to call somebody and go, hey, I'm sorry, we're not gonna finish today.
Excuses from the tech.
Yeah, excuses from the tech makes me have to apologize. So I always kind of said, and I don't know how to clean this up, I have to eat the crap sandwich they made. Because they don't have to deal with the customer, I do. You know, so I got to call the guy and go, hey, remember how we promised you your truck could be done today? It's not going to be. And then if they ask why, I got to tell them why. Hey, we messed up a part, we messed up a seal, we got a leak. You know.
When did you come up with that? When?
I don't even know. Probably a couple years ago. I just always believed in my grandfather's kind of like that. It's just like craftsmanship and doing something great and doing something right. So he was always proficient in that, and I think it was always like that even when me and my brother started early on. We had a drywall business, and it's just like I didn't really care how much we got paid. To this day, I still don't care how much we really get paid. It's not about the money. It's about doing something right. I mean, just doing it to the best of your ability. Be proud of what you do. And I hate when people make excuses. I love when somebody goes, hey, you know that brand new pump you just gave me? I just shattered it. You know what I mean? I either over torqued it or something, and it wasn't in straight, and it broke the tab off it, or like we had a compressor, and there's a fitting that goes on the back of it in a Kenworth. And so the fittings they were selling us were wrong, so then you tighten the nut up on the back, but it still doesn't seal, and you can tell that it's swiveling, right? So you put a little more turn on it, and it still swivels, so you can tell it's not seating. So you put a little more on it, and when you do, you break the back of the case of the compressor. And so then you just buy another one.
How much is a part?
It's a $600 compressor. Oh. No, but it happens, but what I'm saying is we didn't do it once. We did it twice. Because they were giving us aftermarket hoses, and then when you start examining the hose and where the fitting goes in, the metal fitting bottoms out too soon or too late. No, I'm sorry, too soon. It bottoms out too soon, so then when you go to tighten the jam nut, when you go to tighten it up, it actually presses that fitting in there, and then it breaks it. Like if it was maybe a 32nd of an inch shallower, so if you compared the old hose and the new hose, you're like, they're money. These are exact fit, and they thread up. Mm-hmm. But before you go to put Freon in it, you tighten up the fitting. It's got a 90 coming out of you, so you tighten up the fitting, and then you go to move the fitting. You're like, well, it's still loose. So you snug a little bit. It's still kind of loose. You snug a little more. Yeah, and then you crack, and then you look at the back of the pump, and there's only way. So right now in the shop, we have 2 brand new compressors because we broke 2 of them, and then we got a backing plate off an old one and another backing plate off another old one because we serviced a bunch of these trucks. So I have 2 brand new compressors, and we'll probably never ever use them. You know what I mean? If I don't get that same job that comes in. But it's kind of like that when you start hearing the excuses, so that's probably a legitimate excuse. Like, hey, we bought the hoses from this guy, we bought the pump from this guy. They said they were right and they weren't compatible. That's kind of okay.
Did they warranty them for you?
No, there's no way we broke them. I won't even ask for warranty on something like that.
Really?
I would never.
Even a discount?
No, it's our fault, right? I mean, kind of the saying that I think in our business that should always be true, if you screw up, you pay. In other words, if I fix your truck and I do it right, I expect you to pay me what we agreed to.
Okay.
But if I screw up, I got to pay. And I try to warranty parts and labor if we're putting OE parts in. I can't always do that on some jobs, but I always feel it's unfair to the customer.
You can call me at extension 31.
So you never ask somebody for?
I don't ask for anything I don't deserve. Even I bought parts and this and that. We've kind of done some dealings before, and it's just like you can ask, hey, can you help me? Can you help me? But if they can't, they can't. But I don't feel like, you know how people do this all the time. They'll break a part, destroy a part or something and say, hey, it was in the box. That's the way it was. You can't do that, man. It's just like
just shiesty.
It is. And there's a bunch of scammers out there, and I think that it's just horrible. But how do you get people to just understand that we're responsible for what we do? We just are. And I think a lot of people just, they don't feel that. Like, it's not my problem. Like, say you spend $5,000 to repair your truck, right?
Okay.
Part fails. It's a good part. It's an OE part, and it fails. In a week, you bring it back. Hey, this thing's leaking like a pig. And I look, yep, sure enough, injector pump's bad or whatever. We need to get you a new one. So the parts house gives me a new one, whoever I bought it from, right? They'll give me another one. They'll warranty it. But who's going to pay me to do it? So then what if I tell you, hey, that's an 8-hour job, so now you're going to have to pay me $800.
You just did it, Darren.
Yeah, it's not fair to you, right? So then you get mad. Well, the part, whoever sold me the part, they're not going to help me. But it's unfair to you, right? So most of the time I'll just eat the labor, because I feel like if I paid $5,000 to somebody and a part failed, and they're like, hey, well, we're going to get you a new part.
So what about the guy, as a shop owner, you've had people ask you to bring their own parts. And I've heard this too. I'm dealing with other shop owners and talking to them, or talking to other shop owners, I've heard this. It's like, well, one guy told me, I don't remember who it was, but he said, we brought it up. I said, what if somebody wants to bring their own parts? He's like, do you bring your own eggs when you go to
That's awesome.
Denny's for breakfast?
To make my omelet?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those crazy things that I think people don't understand. They think we're buying a part and selling it for exactly what we paid for it. We're not. We make our money on parts and labor. Yeah. And anybody who thinks that's unfair, if you go to Walmart, they're not selling you the bottle of water for what they paid for it. They're marking it up, and that's what we do. And a lot of times that markup is there to save you, because on warranty things, like imagine if you didn't mark up the parts, if you never marked up the parts and you just charge for the labor, and then I get a comebacker that's under warranty. Well, there's no room, because it's not a perfect science what we do. It's complicated. It's not like back in the day when everything was mechanical. It was pretty straightforward.
The science of repairing vehicles.
Yes.
Okay.
You gotta have a ton of computers, a ton of stuff to figure a lot of this stuff out, and a lot of times it'll be gray area. You have this intermittent problem. It's not so much intermittent. It does happen. Like, you can get it to happen on the road. Like the other day, we have a bus, and we're trying to prove that it doesn't have a fuel issue from the tank there. Everything checks out okay. We have 2 guys in a bus. One guy has 3 jerry cans strapped to the floor of diesel with the fuel line that goes to the injector pump in the fuel, right, through a hole through the floor. And one guy's driving the bus, because we got to get the bus going up a grade, and we got to be at 55 to 60 miles an hour. So that because it's returning so much fuel, but it's returning back to the tank. So he's got 5 gallons going like this, and he's got a flashlight in there looking, and then he's trying to look at a computer at the same time to see what the fuel rail pressure is and see if it's dropping. So he's going like this, and he's looking, and then when it gets down to about there's 3 inches above the jerry can, he takes it and staffs it in the other one, but the bus doesn't stall and they keep running. So to everybody, this sounds simple, right? It sounds simple, but on a Cummins, there's some things that are complicated. That fuel system is not.
Did you figure it out?
Yeah. And so we start looking at these, looking at these parameters. I'm like, okay, it's not that. But like I said, once they said it goes into D-rate, once they get to the top of the hill, it wouldn't happen for the rest of the day. They'd have no issues. That's a pretty hard problem to find. So finally, I just jerked out all 6 of the injectors, and I took it to a local place and said, bench test these for me. So they call me and say, hey, all your injectors are good. So I go look, and I'm thinking, man, one of these has got to be bad. So I look at one, it's still within tolerance, but it has a little bit of a high return rate. So I asked the guy, I go, can this be my problem? And he goes, no, it's not your problem. I said, can I talk to somebody else? So another guy comes, like the manager guy comes. I said, look at this return rate.
Is that one place we know of?
Yes, it's that one place we know of. They're better now, but they weren't back then.
Okay.
That's when they're in that really shiny place. Where that old place, really nice.
Taj Mahal.
Taj Mahal. So the next guy comes out and he says, nah, I don't think that's it here. I said, I need to talk to somebody else. So the next guy who comes up, he's greasy looking. I'm thinking, this is the guy I want to talk to, because he probably bench tests these things he knows. I go, look at this return rate. Doesn't it look a little bit high? It's still in parameters, but it looks high. And he goes, it is a little bit high. I go, that could cause my code. That could cause my problem. Couldn't it? And he's like, it could. I go, sell me an injector. So give me my other 5, sell me one. I threw it in there, ran back because I got to be done by 3 o'clock. You know what I mean? Slam the injectors in it, start it up, and just hope it's going to be okay, because I don't even have time to test drive. I may have time to test drive around the block and make sure I don't have any leaks, but I don't have time to go back up the hill. and the truck never came back, so we know that we fixed it. But I mean, people think it's super simple. Like, we just look at this computer, we look at the data, and it says replace this. Just put this in it and it will fix it. No, it just points us in a direction. So,
don't even get started on electrical.
Right, and especially intermittent electrical. You know what I mean? It's a nightmare in trying to explain to people, we cannot fix what's not broken. In other words, I'm not saying your truck is fixed. I'm just telling you it's not broken right now. Well, can you fix it? Can you fix it? Yeah, we can fix it, but it needs to be broken. Your truck breaks for about 5 minutes, and then we start testing it. Now everything fixed, so you'll have a computer hooked up to it. You have a laptop hooked up, and you're looking at that code to make sure it's still active. It's still active, so you're doing whatever testing you're doing, right? And you're checking. Then all of a sudden that code goes inactive. You're done. Because now every part of the check is going to check out right. Smooth. Right. I mean, it's just not simple. And people just, it's the same conversation. Imagine you're talking to not a fleet manager, but you're talking to just a layman, right? And so you say to the guy, there's nothing wrong with your truck right now. Oh, so it's fixed. No, sir, it's not fixed. I'm sure your driver is having the problem he's saying, because it logged the code, like 5 times. So I'm sure he's having that problem. Well, so can he drive it? Is it going to be fixed? No. I mean, I don't know when it's going to break.
I cannot duplicate.
Right. I can't.
Problem cannot be duplicated.
So if we pick up the truck, we'll be okay? I don't know. I mean, it hasn't happened to us, but it could happen. Well, so if there's still a problem with it, why can't you fix it? And I say once again, because it's not broken now. And I've said this, and this is perfectly logical to me, but I think to most people it's not. You can't fix what's not broken. They don't comprehend that. When it's electronic, it can work one time. Sometimes it's just temperature.
Yep.
Like, you've seen things before. I'm sure you've seen it.
I've seen a coil pack fail when it was hot. It gets cold, it works.
Right. Or, yeah.
So I had the problem, right? And it started acting up. I pulled it to the side of the road, and I carried a gallon of water just for this.
Right.
Just to prove it. So I ran out, I dumped water on the coil. Right. Misfire went away. I'm like, it's my coil.
Yeah, once a coil, because when the heat goes up, when resistance goes up, voltage drops, and that's kind of just the way. But we've had coolant leaks before. Like, we will not turn a truck loose if we did AC work or coolant. If we finish it that day, you can't pick it up that day, because we're going to check it the next morning. We've had trucks that we test drive, pressure test them, not only vacuum them, pressure test them, test drive them, they have no leaks. Come back the next morning and there's a cold leak. Only leaks when it's cold, doesn't leak when it's hot. We've seen them the other way too, where they don't leak where they're cold. Same thing with AC. You finish an AC job, you're completely done. You check the Schrader valves, you check everything with a sniffer, with everything, all the tools we have, and you've got no leaks. It's blown at 35 degrees or whatever. This thing's money.
And it gets hot?
And then, no, it just sets overnight. It just sets overnight because, Freon's constantly under pressure, so it just sits there overnight. And then you'll go check one of the Schrader valves in the morning, because we put dye in it, turn on a light, check it, friggin' Schrader valves leaking. When we didn't do that before, we'd say, okay, it's money, there's no leaks, everything's clean, everything's perfect. So we turn to the guy, and the guy brings it back 4 days later and says, my air conditioning's not working. So now we just make it a policy of everything we touch, every seal, everything like that, the next day after it sat overnight. So, whatever temperature it was, but first thing in the morning, we check all that stuff, check all the fittings and make sure we don't have any leaks. But what we do sounds simple, right? If you're just a guy that's getting your stuff worked on, it just sounds simple, right? And if you work at the local Dodge dealership, or you work at you're working on the same crap every day. I mean, you see the same problems every day, so it's pretty easy.
Yeah, code X57283. Right. Oh, that's whatever part, yeah. With all the computers, do you think cars or trucks have become more easy to work on or more difficult?
More difficult.
Really?
Absolutely, for sure.
But, okay, playing devil's advocate, though, you have a computer now that tells you, so many codes or code, or you can see this sensor, that sensor. Don't you think it's leading you more towards what's wrong with it than
I think you're right. Like diesel motors before, a lot of times, like, they didn't monitor lift pressure. You might know, like if it's a Huey style, you might know high pressure oil, but you don't really know what your lift pressure is. Like in an International, they didn't monitor that before. Now that's monitored. There's a lot of things that, before stuff wasn't monitored that is now. There are more sensors, there are more things. But if we're just talking about diesel alone, the computers are better, and the technology's better, but it's also more complicated. Like when we ran the first DT466 motors, the electronic ones, they were a Huey style. there was almost nothing on the side of the motor. I mean, there's a high pressure pump, there was an oil rail, fuel rail on the outside that you could easily look at, see if it's leaking. You know, it was easy to get to. You had a turbo hanging off the other side, and it wasn't variable geometry, you know.
Okay.
And so
pretty basic.
It was pretty basic. It was still an electronic engine, still had a cam sensor, a crank sensor, all those other things. But it was pretty simple and pretty easy to work on. Then if we just use International as that, then they put an EGR cooler on the exhaust side. So now there's more crap over there that you got to deal with. And then that wasn't good enough. Now we need an EGR cooler on the intake side too. So there's a crossover tube that's going that way, you know. And as things became more complicated, like say for instance on International, if you lost an injector, it would just be that one injector. Like that is shorter and open, you just lose that one injector and then shut it down, you run a 5 cylinders.
Okay.
But as they progressed, they made banks. So you have a 6-cylinder, straight 6-cylinder, right? And they consider it 2 banks. So 1 through 3 is a bank, and 4 through 6 is a bank. They consider, so you lose one injector, it shuts off all 3 of those cylinders, right? And now the engine doesn't run, and people think they got a major problem. And they're not even getting home at this point. Before, if you lost an injector, it shuts it off. You can make it home on 5 cylinders. Maybe not if you're loaded, but you can probably make it. But then you got to go through the whole hassle of figuring out, okay, which injector is the bad one? Yeah, you can look at the codes, but we've seen that mislead us before too. And if we're just staying on International because it'll just make it easier, like you can do a cylinder contribution test, right? Or a relative compression test, right, with the computer. Now it will tell us that one of the cylinders, like it'll say cylinder 2, you know, is not making the compression it should. And what we found is, usually that's not right. One of the cylinders is not making compression.
It's not necessarily number 2.
Exactly. We take it apart, we check the head, we check like an exhaust port, we do a leak down test or something. And we're like, it's not cylinder 2, it's cylinder 5. So yeah, there's things that have made it easier, but like a
P1399, a random cylinder misfire in a car.
Right.
It's telling you there's a misfire, but you don't know where it's at.
Exactly. And so I think it's made it more complicated. I think it is harder. I think we need more computers now. I think we need more stuff than we used to. Gosh, I remember when I started, you know, working on electronics, I didn't even have a laptop. I bought the shop manuals and I'd pull flash codes out of the dash and it'd get me in the ballpark, and I know how to read a wiring diagram. I'd figure it out from there. You know, I could figure stuff out.
Okay.
But as it is now, like people call me all the time, hey, you know, I got this code reader. Bro, code reader's not going to help you at all. Like guy calls me, 6.7 Cummins, calls me just today, and he says, I forget what he told me, what his issues was, and he wanted to put an aftermarket turbo and all this, and you know, I think it's a 2009. Well, those ones were known to coke over, those turbos. They had some issues with them idling and whatever. And so I said, that's what I would imagine is if we hook a scanner up to it and we look at data, I'll bet you're only boosting to probably 50 or 60%. I would imagine. I can't prove that, but we've brought those turbos in before, rebuilt them, cleaned them up, put them back, and now the boost is at 97%. Now the guy's like, oh, I got a new truck.
Is he going to bring it in?
I don't know if he'll bring it in, but it's just like, you know, people are thinking, oh, I'm not getting enough power, I need this, I need that. Well, before you had variable geometry turbos, and before you had so many of these emissions things, and you didn't have any back pressure from DPFs, and you didn't have like before DPFs, if the truck smoked, I could tell you what it was. If it was white smoke and it burned my eyes, it's fuel. Injector's stuck open, right? If it's white smoke and it doesn't burn my eyes, it's some sort of coolant. And back then it wasn't an EGR cooler. You know, you kind of had an idea.
What if it was black smoke?
If it's black smoke, if it didn't burn your eyes real bad, you think, okay, I'm burning oil, right?
Okay.
But if it's black smoke and it really kind of burns your eyes, you're like, that's fuel. That's partially combusted fuel. But whenever you had white smoke coming out that burned the crap out of your eyes, that's just raw fuel. That's an injector that's just stuck on, and that cylinder is making no combustion. It's just blowing it straight out the tailpipe. But there was no DPF to block that. Now the DPF blocks almost everything, so it's like those old ways that we used to do stuff
don't work anymore.
And I'm sure I sound like a dinosaur right now. I'm sure guys are like, we haven't done that.
No, guys watching now are eating this stuff up because, I mean, all right, I don't know. You talk to somebody on the phone. All right, go stick your head out in the white smoke and tell me if it burns your eyes or not.
I've actually told guys that. I'm like, he's like, my truck's smoking white, and I think it's this. I go, does it burn your eyes? He goes, well, I don't know. I go find out. But if you want me to help you, because a lot of
burn your eyeballs, dude.
Right, but a lot of these guys call, and they're calling from other states. I'm not going to be able to, I can't work on their truck. One guy called from North Carolina remember the last hurricane?
Yes.
So he's calling me and he's like, well, I don't know what I'm going to be doing. I was out mowing the lawn, but it looks like it's going to rain. I go, dude, a hurricane's coming. Like, it's probably raining, And I didn't hear from him for like a month. And I thought, man, I hope his house is still there. I hope he's okay. I don't remember what state he was in. So then he called me about a month later. I go, hey, is your house still there? He goes, yeah. I go, you okay? And he's like, yeah. I go, did you get your truck fixed? He goes, yeah, I worked on my truck, But he had his like brother-in-law just throwing parts at it. And I said, you got to tell him to stop. You're going to go bankrupt. He has no idea what he's doing. Go find somebody who has a computer or a laptop and knows what they're doing.
Chuck these parts at it.
Yeah, and get somebody to read the data, and see what it means. And that's the thing. You can look at stuff, and if you don't know what you're looking at, knowing what it's supposed to be, right? Know what the data is supposed to be saying, right? Like know what the parameters are supposed to be. And a lot of things too, when you read technical manuals, it'll say, let's just use this. 5, you can use whatever measurement, PSI, whatever. Just say we use 5, plus or minus 1. Okay? What if it's 6.1? So it's almost in, but it's not. Right?
You're good, dude. Just take the law of averages and round down.
Right, but you can guess wrong because at that point of the check, you've got to make a decision. Yeah. Am I going to condemn this part, or am I going to put that part in and replace it? Like I remember one time I had a bunch of tow trucks and they were all the same brand, and it said the resistance on this component needed to be 2200. So it was like almost 3,000, and I thought, well, that's not in parameters. It's not even close. It's like 2,200 plus or minus. I forget what the plus or minus. And that was way high. I'm thinking, well, I probably should replace this component, but because I had a bunch of trucks that were all the same, and everybody came in for the day, and I worked on the trucks at night, I just went to another truck that ran perfect that day, and I pulled that component out, and I did a resistance check on it. It read exactly like the truck that was broken.
There you go.
So then you think, well, maybe somebody should call and tell them that technical service manual is written incorrectly. Well, yeah, like what am I going to get paid? Like when I was in the military, if you found something wrong in a technical service manual and you could prove it and you did all the work, the government would pay you. They would pay you something, oh, you've realized there's a problem here, so this is the way you think it should. So then the engineers would go over the component and then see what they needed to do. And if they change the technical service order, you get paid. I don't know what you got paid, but there was incentive. But if you were to call Caterpillar or whoever and go, we found a problem, they're like, well, good for you. You know what I mean? We're not rewriting it. We don't care.
If you find a problem like Caterpillar, you should make a YouTube video about it and get paid yourself.
Right. So yeah, I think it's much more complicated than it used to be, because I remember the tools I had back then versus the tools we have now.
A big freaking hammer.
Right.
Big screwdriver.
Right. I remember
stethoscope.
Yeah, I just remember the tools we had. We didn't need much. You know what I mean? We didn't need to be super technical.
Adjustable wrench.
Right. I mean, it was very little. But I mean, just now the electronic things that we have to have, just to look at these trucks, and then people go, why does it cost so much? Come pay my bills. You know what I mean? Come see what it's like just to run the computers in the office. You know what I mean? There's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 workstations. It seems like we need a server every 2 years. You know what I mean?
But not only that, I mean, we're in California.
Right.
State tax.
Oh, yeah.
What's if somebody gets hurt?
Workman's comp.
Workman's comp,
yeah.
Insurance.
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the reasons I shut down the tow company. It wasn't profitable at the end. I mean, it was profitable for many years. It was profitable for over 20 years. But, when Workman's comp went up, we didn't even have any claims, and it kept going up and up and up. And I'm like, we can't afford this. And we were trying to keep guys working that had worked for us for a long time. And I kept telling my wife, we need to get rid of this. And she's like, no, these guys have been here a long time. And then once the last time, I'm like, look what it's going to cost if we get rid of the towing. And back then we sold almost all the trucks. We had 2 guys towing, and we had 3 trucks here. And you look, because it affected the mechanics, which I don't see how. You know what I mean?
What do you mean affected the mechanics?
In other words, it affected our overall insurance modification. Having tow drivers, even though they're separate, like how you have clerical, that's one rate, and then you have mechanics that are at another rate, and then you have tow guys that are at another rate, right?
Oh, okay.
But when you bundle those all together, it affects, like, say when they gave us the numbers, they're like, okay, this is what you're going to pay for your tow guys, and your mechanics are going to pay this X number. Okay, well, what if we get rid of the towing? So then they submit it again. Now my mechanics came down. And I'm like, how is that? Because you know what? I drove a tow truck for a long time. I mean, for my own company. And Yeah, we got hurt once in a while. I guess, yeah, somebody could die, on the side of the freeway. That's possible. We didn't get hurt that much. Mechanics get hurt way more than tow guys. Now, maybe not across the country, but for my company, it's easy to smash your hand, get something in your eye, break a finger. I'm not saying any of that stuff happens, but you're using tools.
Okay, so mechanics would get hurt more often than a tow guy.
But they pay less. But it costs me less to insure that. And so
I don't get it.
I don't either. But I mean, I've lived in California my whole life, and I'm not moving. You know what I mean? I'd love to live in a place where it's green. Where you see the trees. I told my wife when we retire.
When you retire, will you move?
I know, because I told her, I said, look, when we retire, I want to go to some place where it's green, like maybe Oregon or something. She said, okay. She said, it rains a lot in Oregon. And I said, okay. Who cares? I don't mind the rain. She goes, but you don't like playing golf in the rain. I'm saying, we're not moving. I love playing golf way too much. We can play golf here every day, you know what I mean? Like all year round.
Palm Springs, what, an hour from here? Maybe?
Palm Springs, we were just out there last weekend, and it's the best winter golf in the country. But I have to live with it, you know what I mean? And then the fact is, they're going to make that crap sandwich for me once in a while, and I'm going to have to eat it, you know what I mean? I'm going to have to deal with it, because it's funny.
Have you fired anybody from making too big of a crap sandwich?
No. Can't do that. Guys, people make mistakes. We all make mistakes, but...
Do you take them aside and, hey, you need to learn from this?
Oh, of course. And there's sometimes I'm like, do you know what you did wrong? And they'll say yes. And I said, do you know how not to do it again? And they're like, yeah. And I'm like, okay. And then we're done.
Okay. So what's your day, how do I word this?
A day in the life?
The day in the life of a shop owner.
I would say for me...
What time do you get here?
It's much easier than it used to be. We used to start, when we had the tow company, I'd be there every morning at 4. Start at 4 in the morning, wash up all the trucks, whatever. And then we'd work as late as we had to work, depending on, so I'd wash all the trucks, had a couple guys help me, then I'd get in the last truck and I would tow all day, and then I'd come back at night, and if there were any repairs, we had all new equipment, but there's still repairs that need to be made, so I'd stay there, and some nights, and I remember many times when we first started, we'd work 3 weeks, we'd work 3 straight weeks.
Check this right. Go ahead, 3 straight weeks.
3 straight weeks without a day off, and then we'd get 4 days off. So we would go back and forth, doing that. So it was a lot of long hours, but now mine's pretty cush. You know what I mean? As far as for me, it's 5 days a week. I probably, get up in the morning, read my Bible, go to the gym. I get here by between 8 and 9, and I'm out of here by 5. Yeah, and I mean, there's a part that I feel incredibly guilty. And it feels cowardly, to go get in my car and leave when I know guys are still here working, working on trucks and stuff like that. And so...
Yeah, but that's I'm sure they would want to be home with their families if they could, but
no, but these guys,
some guys need to pay bills and take care of stuff.
But these guys don't work long. I mean, the day to me is short. They start at 7 and they're off by 5. Like if we're going to work a Saturday, try to be, maybe start at 4 in the morning, be done by 12. Because the guys
knock it out.
Yeah, they got to get some rest. But I still feel guilty that I'm not doing the work. Like me and you've talked about it a lot.
Yeah, but
I think I've earned it. I do, but it still feels weird.
It's been 20 years in the making.
Right. But I don't feel like I always hated the suit. I never liked the guy with the suit. I always liked the guy who did the work. Blue collar workers, those are my people. I love the guy. I mean, it almost to tears. I'll see I'll be somewhere and I'll see a service truck fire up. I'm in the car early in the morning, 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. I see a guy firing up his truck, taking his cup of coffee and, service bed on the back. I don't know where he's going, but he's going, and if it's going to be one of those hot days, how it is in California when it's 80 degrees at 4 or 5 in the morning, it's going to be 110. And when you're out in the field, it's not comfortable. You can be out in the middle of the sun, you can get an umbrella, but it's still freaking 110.
Sweating your nuts off.
Right, but I just love those guys who answer the phone and say, I'll go, right? Like, I'll go. Like somebody's broke down, somebody's this, I'll go. That's admirable. I think it's really easy. I'm not saying everybody's job who works in an office is easy. Not saying that. I'm not disrespecting them. I just love the blue collar worker. When you go down the street and you see the guy with a shovel and he's digging?
Yeah.
That's hard work. You dig with a shovel, it's hard work. And it looks easy. Like running a chainsaw, right?
Yes.
A chainsaw looks fun when you first start cutting down trees, but if you buck that chainsaw every day, 5, 6, 7 days a week, you're like, damn, I hate the way it sounds. You know what I mean?
I hate the smell. I hate the bar oil getting on me.
Right. I mean,
same with a mechanic, though, right?
It is.
So, yeah, I started off, working at my dad taught me, right? And then I picked up a job at the dealership.
Right.
And I'm like, this is awesome. I'm working on cars.
Right.
Then, 6-7 months in, I'm like, this sucks. I hate working on cars.
Yeah, it's because then it turns into a job and it's work. But I just admire, like I said, the blue collar guy that goes in day and day out.
So being the shop owner has given you giving you access to things you typically wouldn't have access to if you were still digging ditches.
I think it has, but I never want to get too far away from, like, we make jokes. I'll go out to my toolbox because, like the instruction I was getting from ATI, was to stop working on stuff. You stay in the office, you do this, you do that. So I still have my toolbox, I still have a roll cart out there, and it's dusty, I go wipe it off. So the other day I had to do something, I don't remember what it was. So I went out there and got like a screw gun or some electric driver, I don't even remember what it was. And so I remember asking Jimmy, the shop foreman, and I go, hey, how does this thing work? Like, how do you put it in reverse? And he just laughed, because obviously I know how to put it in reverse, but I'm like, how does the ratchet, how do you know how to take it off and put it on? Oh, on the snap on it says on off. Right? So I'm like, oh no, I can still figure this out. But I feel like there's guys that have worked for me for a long time, and they know that I can do all that. I taught most of them. But the new guys, I guarantee, don't think I can do that. And I can see in their eyes that they don't have the respect. But my point is, when you're a blue collar worker, you only respect other blue collar workers. Show me what you can do. But they think because I sit in this office that I'm the owner, that I don't know how to do this stuff. Like I never got dirty. Like I never, you know what I mean? And you don't
want to break a nail.
Right, right. And I love fixing stuff. The best part about anything is somebody brings you something that's friggin' broken.
No.
And the best part is when somebody brings you something broken that somebody else couldn't fix. Because we get a lot of stuff like that. It's been to this guy and this guy. One guy spent $5,000 on his truck, and they just threw parts at it, you know what I mean? And we finally fixed it for him, right? But it's like nothing feels better than somebody brings you something broken, and you do all the diag. You figure it out. You come up with an estimate, you get the parts, you put the parts on, and you've guessed right, because what we do is guessing. It's educating guessing, but we guess. And you put it on, and there's nothing that sounds better to me. I still love the fact when the guys are working on a motor or putting a motor back together. When I start hearing it crank, and I can hear it purging, I'm like, I gotta go out there. I don't go buy them, but I just stand outside, and once I hear it start running, it sounds so cool. And there's that fuel knock because there's air in it. It's just not running right, and you hear it slowly start clearing up and start clearing up and start clearing up, and then pretty soon it starts idling smooth. I love that sound because that's something when they brought in was blown up and didn't run, and now it does. And in here, I never get that feeling. I just never, I don't get anything out of this. You know what I mean?
You have a big TV in here with sound. You can watch the guys.
Right, I can. Everything pretty much in our shop is by email, like voicemails and everything in reviews.
Does that bother you that they're saying that, or is it?
It does, but it doesn't. But like, say I go, like I think the other day, me and you went and got lunch, right? Yeah. And we weren't gone that long, right? We come back, and so
a whole bunch of
I get to the front, I get to the first girl, and she goes, "Hey, Darren." And so I look at what she's doing, and then I give her answer, and I start to walk away, and then the other girl's going like, don't go. And then so she has another thing. And a lot of times it's, because I'm a control freak and I'm getting better at that. And sometimes I'll be like, what do you think we should do? And 9 times out of 10, when they tell me their response, they're right. I go with that. That's as good as we can do. These are all the choices you have. And I mean, there's all kinds of things. What are we marking the part up to? Who is the customer? They have a different labor rate. We did the diag, but look, it ran over. Should we charge for this? Can we charge for this? Or should we agree to, no, we had to do way more work. We're going to charge them for that. Or no, we should have gotten that diag done within that allotted time, so we're not going to charge them for that. Just
but just a bunch of unknowns.
There is, and like say when we do work for certain fleet managers that know what parts our computers on a matrix, so it marks up certain parts. Well, say if you buy an injector, a freaking gasoline injector from whoever, and it hits it for whatever percentage, that's really not that big a deal, right? So there's a matrix to it. But if you take a Cummins injector that you're paying $500 for, and it hits it for 35% or whatever the matrix is set up at, nobody's going to pay
$700
or more. Sometimes it'll mark it up to like $800. So I got to review those things and kind of go through and go, okay, that's too much. I mean, we need to make our margin, but that's too much.
What do you think guys should look for when they're buying a used diesel truck?
I would want to see real service records. That's what I'd want to see. Just real service records and know what you're looking at. What I care about is how often did you service it and what parts did you put in it already.
What if he doesn't have it?
I don't trust most people, then I don't trust at all. Like I've never bought a used truck, I always buy new, but I'm going to put this new service truck in play, and it's different, so I don't want to go buy a new truck because I don't know how it's going to work, because I got a different plan, like a box truck with a lift gate instead of a typical mechanic's truck, right? And so when I look at the service records, I see this thing's been serviced. Well, it's a good company we're buying it from, but I look at all the service records and it's just like it's been serviced at the right intervals the entire time. And then I look at what parts have been put in it. Not a lot. Like this truck typically needs a radiator. Like they kind of go bad on these trucks. It hasn't had a radiator yet. So then I can kind of go, okay, I know this truck's going to need a radiator, at time, because that's the weak link.
The guy's looking at Dodges or Chevys or Fords.
Right.
Because a lot of guys on YouTube are looking at like how they determine which diesel truck to buy. And then they say, there's inherent flaws with this one, okay, whatever they may be.
Right.
But I see. Is it more of like a feel? Like, okay, Darren, you're selling me this truck. Is it the way I feel about how you selling it to me, or is it what I see? Like,
I would never buy it from some used car place ever, ever, ever. Because we used to do work for a guy like that. He'd go buy diesel trucks at the auction, and then he'd bring them over here. They looked really good. When everybody lifted their trucks up and made them look all cool. We just looked at them and they had major problems. I would buy one from the original owner, and even people I still educate. The guy sat down the other day and he's like, hey, I've had my truck for this long, how often should I be doing this or that? I said, no, a fuel filter goes in that every time an oil filter goes in it. I don't care. And at minimum, you're going to do the oil change and the fuel filter every 5,000 miles. And if it needs an air filter, think about it. Don't blow it out. Don't bang it on the ground, friggin' throw it away and get a new one. I want to buy a truck from that. And I guess if you're looking, what's the guy's house look like? Does he look put together? I'm not talking about is he wearing jeans, but does he look like a pig? Does he look, you know what I mean? Does it look like he takes care of his stuff? People buy diesel trucks who think they want a diesel truck, but they had a gas truck before, and so they think, oh, well, we just put an oil filter, we go to Jiffy Lube and they put oil. No, a diesel's not like that. It's just not like that. You know what I mean? And if that's
a lot of people think that. And a diesel's like a BMW or a Mercedes.
If you think that's how you're going to take care of it,
it's a supermodel.
Yeah, you should just be done, because there are so many things going on. I mean, when you think about fuel pressures, like in the gas injector, we don't do a lot of gas stuff. What, 50, 60 psi at the most to the injector?
Yeah.
Right? Some injectors, you're looking at 20,000 psi in diesel. I mean, you're looking at these huge pressures. And so imagine if, like the other day, we ran into this problem, right, on diesel, but there was an injector, right, and somehow it was brand new and it got stuck on. Like we could tell it was flooding out the cylinder. My God, so we take it out, we send it out to be tested. This guy sends back a picture, and it is blown up, magnified, I don't know to what level. The orifice in that thing is basically like 2 microns.
On a diesel injector?
Yeah, on this injector, this Cummins injector. And there is a metal splinter that came from the injector pump when it came undone that's about 2 microns, maybe a little bit bigger. If it falls like this or like this, it doesn't do it. That friggin' splinter went right into that tube and it's plugged in there like you put a cork, like this.
Like a plunger in a toilet.
Yeah, it just went, and it got stuck. And so now the injector's stuck on, you know what I mean? So it's just pumping fuel into this cylinder, right? So you go to think, and this is just like everything we do is a learning experience, right? Has that ever happened here? Never, never, never. So then I start going, okay, well, good fuel filter, Wix filter, whatever, good fuel filter, diesel, what is it? You know what it filters to? 5 microns.
So it wouldn't even matter.
No, what I'm saying is 4 microns can get through it, 3 microns, you know what I mean? The smaller stuff.
2 microns can go through it.
Which that friggin' metal sliver went right through, the friggin' filter worked its all the way through, and then there's only 6 injectors and went.
So what about a magnet on your filters?
But this was an aluminum splinter, came out of the pump.
Doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter, but so when you're buying used, I would just really advise people not to buy used diesel trucks unless you know who this person is.
Have you seen the pricing on the new one?
I know.
Man, I went to the dealership the other day.
$70,000
to $90,000 for F350 King Cab, or King Larry, or what?
King come
Ranch.
on, King's Ranch. You don't know your Fords. King's Ranch. Yeah.
I'm not a Ford guy. I'm a GM guy.
Oh, that's sad.
But they're laying a bunch of people off anymore.
I don't even know how we're friends.
I don't either, dude.
But yeah, I just think you really got to know the guy, how, and just that. What did he do to maintain it? And he can lie, but if he's...
Yes, you're right, he can lie, but also a good indicator. Like, I got in your truck for the first time the other day. I mean, that thing was immaculate inside.
Right.
It's so that's old. It's what, 2005 you said?
2008.
The way he keeps the interior is also very, very good indicator on how he took care of the engine. Because if he's if he's not worried about a spot on the inside, like I think you're the type of guy, if something landed on your, even on your floor mat, right?
Yeah.
Piece of chocolate or something, you're going to be in there the next day, get some cleaner, get a brush, get it off, get it out of there.
I agree with you, and I think that's true. I think that's a good stereotype to use. But say like my uncle, who's like got like a perfect house, perfect cars, perfect everything, and me and my cousin, which that my uncle, that would be his dad. So we talked about this. He came to my shop one time. He said, "Hey, you know, I'm going to clean." And he used to do this all the time. He goes, "Hey, can I use your steam cleaner?" I'm like, "Sure." So he had one of those big Hummers. So he would steam clean the engine compartment, the underneath, the washer. He sometimes would be at our shop for 5 or 6 hours, detailing this thing, just making it look perfect. I'm like, "Hey, Uncle, when's the last time you changed oil on that thing?" He's like, "I don't even know." Right? And it's like we would see certain things like, it's like, hey, like he said, "Hey, my dad," and my cousins, he knows about mechanical stuff too. And he says, "Hey, my dad thought that he lost a motor or something, was making some noise. When they checked it, there was just basically no oil left in it." You know what I mean? And so the valves were making noise because there wasn't enough oil to, pump to the top of the motor. So I think what you're saying is true, but there's always that, that possibility.
One man out.
Yeah.
Odd man out.
Yeah, so I don't know what's right about that as far as like what's correct and what's not with that. But I think, just look at all those things and here's the thing. Buyer beware. Buyer beware. That's why I've never bought used equipment. I trust no one. You know what I mean?
So talk about your Hellcat, your Dodge Hellcat.
Oh, yeah. I wanted that car forever. My favorite car is the 1970 Challenger. And I contemplated building one, and I started looking at all this stuff, and I'm like, if I got this chassis and this and this and this and made all this modern stuff, if I did all the work, I'm like, I'm at $100,000. So if you say 100, it's more than 100, right?
150.
He probably just keeps going because you forget, I need fittings and I need bolts and I need tires, and you forget all these things. So I started thinking, and I don't want to do that anymore. I remember a long time ago, I started building this 69 Roadrunner and whatever, I don't know how we got it. My dad got it, and then I drove it, and then my brother blew it up, and then, so I, cut it all apart, and you put a roll cage in it, put a frame in it, narrowed the rear end, all this stuff. And it was just work, and I wasn't in this business. I was a construction worker. So anyways,
it was fun to work on cars back then.
It was fun to work on cars. Well, what I'm saying is I'm not going to build this car, but I want a Challenger. And so when they started making the new body style, I started saying, that's a pretty cool car, but it's out of proportion, kind of doesn't look right or whatever. So I'm like, a 70 is still what I want. So then I started looking, and, with I call it the Depression, through 2008 to I don't know how long that stuff lasted. I didn't have any money, so I wasn't going to do anything. I'm barely living, So once things got a little bit better, I started looking at those cars, and what I was going to get is I was going to get an older Challenger, like an RT, like I don't know, 2014, 2012,
okay,
and just cut it up. You know what I mean? Just tub it in the back and just make a rowdy car out of it. And I thought, that'd still work. So I started looking at the Hellcat, and I'm like, I want to get one of these. But back then, they were impossible to get. Now I think now they lease them. I mean, anybody can go in and get one. I don't even think you have to. But before, you couldn't even order them. I mean, you had to wait until a dealer had one. Like, he had that option where they tell them, okay, you have a chance to purchase one. Would you like to purchase one? So you got whatever the service or the sales manager decided he wanted to order.
Yeah.
So I finally decided, that's what I'm going to do. And it had to be black because all the trim pieces are kind of dark gray and black. So white and silver to me looked horrible. And then, whatever. So told the guy, black on black, blah, blah, blah. And he says, well, we have one on order, and it has a VIN number. So I looked at it, and it was a 6-speed. I'm like, I don't want a 6-speed. I want an automatic car. I don't want to. I drove a truck for a long time. I don't want to shift any gears. I just want an automatic. But I couldn't find one anywhere. And you start talking, and you talk to this one dealer. Yeah, we have one that we know we can get $120,000. Like, you guys are high. There's no way. I mean, I want it, but I don't want it that bad. They were hard cars to find. So the local dealership said, okay. So I gave them a deposit. They said, we have a VIN number, blah, 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 stick shift, blah, 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 black on black. I said, cool. Months went by. And then the kid would call me. I'd call him and go, hey, what's up with my car, bro? When's it going to get here? And
you already cashed my check.
Right. And I said, hey, he said, well, we have a Hellcat Charger here. I'm like, brother, there's nothing about a Charger that I want. I want a Challenger. Another couple months go by. I call him, dude, where's my car? Once again, he says, hey, we just got a Charger, a Hellcat Charger. I said, bro, I don't know what you think is interchangeable about these two cars, but they're not the same car. One's a 4-door, that looks nothing like the original Chargers. The Challenger is a 2-door, Like, I know you sell these cars at the dealership and you're a salesman. The only thing I want is a black on black Challenger, or I want my money back. So miraculously that day when I said I want my money back, he goes, we found one.
How convenient.
Right. So I think somebody else's deal fell out. And he goes, but there's a problem. It's an automatic. I'm like, dude, it's what I told you I wanted from day one. Remember when you first met me?
So how long has this been since?
6 months.
Okay,
Like probably 6 months. So there's just this process, right? And I'm just so over it by that time. I'm like, I'm never going to get this car. They were hard to find.
So it's automatic.
So it's an automatic. So I get there, and the only thing that it had that I didn't want is it had a sunroof. Okay, because like race cars and hot rods, they don't have sunroofs. I've never opened it to this day. I've never even opened, the thing you open to let the light in?
Yeah.
I want to believe it's not there. But at least it's a black car, so the sunroof is black, so you don't really see it, but it should have a hard top, right? So that was the only thing I didn't like, but I absolutely love the car. It's not a good car. It's
What do you mean not a good car? It's a bad car.
It's not bad, and it's not a bad car. Like, I always liked Chrysler since I was a kid. Since I went to the drag races, and since I had a friend who had a 70 Challenger, and I had some Mopar guys, and then there's this older man, Mr. Wilder, and he had this crazy Dodge pickup, and he had 270 Challengers in his garage with wedge motors in them, and they were gorgeous. And he would start them up. I'm like, oh man, someday I want one of those cars. Like, that's the coolest car ever. So I was just, down for it. But I knew after driving that Roadrunner and some of the other things, I realized these are not good cars. They're really, really fast, but they don't steer, they don't stop. The doors don't fit right. They're just not good cars. So I knew buying this car that I wasn't a good car. Now, I haven't had any problems except for one. Well, I have a couple problems. But this one was crazy. They send me a recall, and it's something to do with the cruise control. And it's just simply a computer update. Okay. But it tells you in red, like, what will happen, what potentially could happen to you. And it says potentially the throttle, you have the cruise control on, it can just start accelerating by itself. And it says, like, what could you do in that situation? And it says either shut off the ignition or throw it in neutral. Well, can you imagine when you over rev the motor? Like, if you did dump it into neutral, the thing just revs all the way up to the limiter. I mean, that can't be good. So it was painless. I took it in. I mean, the dealership was awesome. You know what I mean? And they just, I dropped off in the morning. The guy called me back by noon, and he said, hey, it's done. It was just a computer thing. And
was the second one in the door?
The one I don't like about the door is when you get the car up around 140, 150 miles an hour. The first time this happened to me, I heard this pop, and I thought, crap, I lost a tire, but I'm like, I'm still good, And then I'm settling down, like, okay, so I got in it again, a pop. Like, what is that? And I still couldn't figure out what it was. And so I tried it on another day when it was darker outside, and the windows are tinted in it. And what I realized is the passenger side window popped out. So, you have this high pressure coming over the windshield and coming around the car, so it creates a low pressure on the sides. And the windows are frameless, right? So they're frameless windows, so the window go like this, it'll pop out. It'll suck the window out. So then I started looking, how can I fix this? And a friend of mine runs a body shop up the street, and he had a Challenger. I think now he has a Hellcat that's like mine. And he was telling me we got to adjust the doors, bring the doors in. I'm like, okay. So I looked at the strikes. You can't move the strikes. They're welded plates, so I couldn't do that. So then I started, like everybody that doesn't know anything, I go on the internet and looked at the, with the forum and trying to figure out if
Did you find anything?
I did. The one guy says, well, if you're say USA, if you're, what?
Is it a knock on the door?
No.
Oh.
If you're say USA upside down or something, or right side up, then flip them upside down. And I took them off and I looked at them and I go, this thing is exactly symmetrical. Like, if it's upside down, right, it's symmetrical. But I flipped them anyways.
Did it fix it?
Didn't do anything. The door still sat. So the door's kind of tipped in at the bottom by the rocker and kind of tipped out a little bit. If you look at the side of the car, it looks okay, but you could see if you put them in there. So then I looked at the hinges. They didn't seem adjustable. So I talked to the guy who runs a body shop. And I'm like, hey, so what can we do about this? And he goes, no, one of my guys can do it, but you got to bend them. Just like, I don't know if you ever worked on a truck, door doesn't fit. Put a piece of wood in there. And you rock on the door and you get it to where it fits right?
That metal.
Okay, I don't really want that happening to my car. So I had that problem. And the other problem that I picked up recently, there's a squeak in the seat. So when I hit a bump, kind of squeaks. But what I'm saying is when I drive the car, I'm thinking, this is a typical Chrysler. You know what I mean? But this thing goes like you wouldn't believe. It's like I remember when I got it, my cousin says, because I usually get tired of a car in a couple of years and I want a new car. And he goes, when you start feeling like you're tired of it, just go tickle the throttle. And he's right. He's right. I mean,
are you tired of it yet?
No. All you got to do is go drive it and you just accelerate just a little bit. And then we're at this car show. It was an all Chrysler car show. So the shop foreman Jimmy went with me, and it's just all basically Challengers and Chargers, all new, within probably 5-6 years old. A bunch of Hellcats there. There's a couple of Demons there or whatever. So what is it, AFE? Yeah, AFE. They had those air filters. You know, so Jimmy's like, oh, you got to put one of those on your car. You got to put one of those on your car. And I'm like, why do I need to put that on my car? And he goes, I think you'll hear the supercharger. It'll sound louder. So we went and looked at him, and the one, it had an encased box. He goes, no, I don't think you want that one. You want the one that's open. I'm like, all right. And so the guy's telling me, oh, this is going to bring more horsepower. I go, dude, the thing's got over 700 horsepower. I'm 54 years old. How much horsepower do I need? And so he's like, well, you know, I said, no, I just want to put it on there, and hopefully it'll make this sound that I want it to make. So we put it on there, and the cool thing is the hood has a bunch of vents in it, you know, to let heat out. Well, the air filter's right under there, so you install that thing right there.
Sucking right from it.
So it's actually supposed to suck from the headlight. Yeah, the old one would draw air, and if you put the closed box, it would draw from the headlight, you know, and that's simply a vent to let hot air from the hood out. But it sits right over the air filter. So when you run this car, right before the exhaust opens up, so you're loading it so you can hear the blower starting to whine, and before the exhaust opens, because then you don't hear the exhaust super loud, it makes the coolest whining sound, just like an old blower on a car, like it just whines. But then if you get into it real hard, then the exhaust opens up, and then that kind of gets drowned out because you hear the exhaust is so loud. But my wife, she doesn't like driving in the car. You know, she says your car's a pain in the butt because it's lowered. You know what I mean? You got to go through the speed bumps and all, and you got to park in a certain place. She's like, I don't want to take your car, right? Let's just take my car. So the other day, for some reason, we had to take my car, and she goes, I don't remember it making this noise before. She's talking about the blower making that noise, and she goes, why does it make that noise? That sounds different. I go, because that air filter thing I put on there. She looked at me, she's like, why would you do that? Like to make it make noise? I go, doesn't it sound cool? And she's like, not really. It just sounds loud. And I remember
that's cool.
I remember the first day after I put it on, right? So I'm driving to the shop. And you know how they, whatever, Bluetooth in your car, right? Mm-hmm. So Jimmy's on the phone with me, the shop foreman. He's the guy that, you know, went to the car show with me. So I'm asking him how things are going at the shop. And I said, I'm on my way. I need this done, and is everything going right? And he's like, yeah. He goes, you know what's even better, though? He goes, when you're driving, I can hear the blower on your car. You know what I mean? The windows are up, but he can hear when I hit the throttle.
That's the most important part of it.
Right. It's like, it doesn't matter if we're not getting our jobs done. It's really cool that worked.
I can hear it.
Yeah, that I can hear the blower on the car. So I would say it's been I love the car. I do.
Is there anything you wouldn't have gotten on it? Besides the sunroof?
Besides the sunroof. That's the only thing I didn't want. Because, I mean, it's cool. It's got a flat black hood on it. So, you know, all the old Chryslers back then, you know, if you got the big engine or you got, you know, the right engine, you could potentially have a red car with a flat black hood or something. So it's kind of retro like that.
You work with a lot of fleets.
We do.
You deal with a lot of fleet managers. Mm-hmm. You had your own tow company.
Right.
Driving your own truck.
Sure.
What do you think some items or key items or things that fleet managers could do to, I don't want to say eliminate, but help decrease downtime on their trucks?
Here's what I think happens. Like, I have a customer specifically that's had somebody like change oil and do lubes for him for many, many years. So when he found me, I do all the repairs and stuff like that. And so I told the guy, I said, hey, your guy that's changing oil for you, he's not doing you any favors, bro. He goes, I said, he's not checking the trucks. The most important thing when somebody's changing oil for you is to look at the truck. And so he talked to his other guy, and he said, well, you know, he's kind of concerned with, you know, things around eye level. I just laughed. All the problems are under the truck. I mean, they're under the truck, and you need somebody with eyes on it. You need somebody who knows what they're doing. So
eye level.
He said that, eye level. So what I started doing for him when we work on his trucks is we do a courtesy inspection on every truck. We just do it. I mean, if he brought it in and said, hey, you know, it's not starting right or it's not running right, I'd tell my guys, do a courtesy inspection before anything. Okay. We'd find air filters that were plugged. We found one air filter, and this truck was running like crap. Gas engine, running like crap. Ford, I don't know what it was. And so I was like, oh, so he started looking at stuff. Guy pulls the air filter off. The air filter was so plugged. You know those ones that are like cone-shaped air filters? They got like a I think it's like a black rubber piece on this end.
Yeah, it's like a little jet.
Yeah.
Like the front of a rocket.
Right.
Yes.
It was trying to suck itself inside out. It was so plugged it had collapsed. It was starting to turn inside out.
Nice.
See, that's a problem. So when you're going and getting those cheap-ass oil changes, and this guy's really hooking you up, like one of my customers, we serviced a bunch of buses for him. He said, hey, I hate to tell you, but I had to call or whatever to do some oil changes, and you know, I just had to get them done. I said, well, I didn't know about them. He goes, well, the trucks stay here too long. And I said, okay. I said, but I'm just telling you, that guy can't do what we do. You know, and I know I sound cocky and arrogant, but I've worked behind that guy before. You know, when he's gone out and done some stuff. Anyone can change oil, and anybody can pencil whip an inspection sheet. You need somebody who knows what they're looking for. They need to know. Even my guys are not proficient. Sometimes I'll see certain things, I'll see a item, I'll go out and I'm like, how did you miss this? You know what I mean? You need somebody to put eyes on it that knows what they're doing. Anybody can check lights. You know what I mean? Anybody can check the oil, transmission fluid, but you need somebody to put eyes. You know, you need to look at things like drive shaft, carrier bearings, checking brakes well though. I mean, if you can't see the inside pad with the wheels off, the wheels got to come off. Okay. Saving people rotors, saving people things like that. And you have to test drive the vehicle. They don't normally do that. If you send a mobile guy out, he may drive it around your yard or something. We go put some miles on it. You got to go drive it on the freeway. Does it pull? Does it vibrate? Does it do this? Does it shift right? Does it downshift right? Smell the transmission fluid. Is it starting to lose that detergent smell? Just because it looks black, if it still smells like detergent, it's probably okay. You need somebody to look at these things, you know, check the alternator, what's it putting out, load test the batteries. All that costs money, but you don't test it, and then you're down the road, and then all of a sudden, the truck doesn't start. Yeah. Because the battery was going bad, driver's not saying anything to the fleet manager, going, hey, I noticed I kind of had a hard start yesterday morning when I got to the yard. He didn't say anything. When you're having the truck serviced, have the batteries load tested, have those things done. Because what people want to do is be cheap on the front end because, hey, I found this guy. And I'm up against it all the time because you know this area that we're in. I mean, it's, you know what I mean? There's always,
a lot of guys.
There's always somebody doing it cheaper. You know what I mean?
On the back of our truck and an S10 pickup.
Yeah. I mean, all they got is a little service truck and a cell phone and they're in business. Yeah. And they'll do it cheaper. And so people are like, this is a good investment for us. Look at the money we're going to save. Okay, well, when that commercial truck breaks down, depending on where it breaks down, then you got to get it towed. What is that going to cost you? Plus your customers, like right now, our FedEx customers are jamming because it's holiday season. They can't afford to have a breakdown. They need to make sure that their trucks, you know, we've had a couple of them for some of the guys break down, and you know they're absolutely desperate. I mean, one of the trucks that broke down the other day. It had, you know, we thought it was just a brake line because that's what we were told. How did that break? And then you see that the spacer block that goes in the rear end has been crushed and the U-bolts are loose. This didn't just happen.
For the leaf springs.
For the leaf springs. And it's not just a regular spacer block. It's like a caster or a camber wedge. Am I right? Camber.
Cast iron?
No, camber. What I'm saying is caster is this. So you have to be... but anyways, it's a part that you have to get from Freightliner. You know, had somebody been checking those things periodically, like say when you roll under a truck, if you see, now this doesn't call our parts of the country, so let's just say California, that's what I know. If you see rust somewhere between two components, that is a heads up that there's a bolt or something loose. You know, like two pieces of metal rubbing together and it'll rust. When you start to see that
between the two pieces.
Just say you had a cross member in a frame and you start to see a little bit of rust on the outline between where the cross member bolts to the frame, or hot riveted.
Okay.
You know those hot rivets are getting loose. That over time the frame is flexed and they're loose. If you see a hanger, you know, a leaf spring hanger, and you see rust around it. Now I'm sure in certain parts of the country you can just throw out what I'm saying, because it's friggin' raining all the time. But here when we see
salt on the road.
Right, you need to look. When you see those rust marks in certain places, you know something's loose. Those bolts either need to come out, be cut off, thrown away, and have new ones put in. But I mean, things like you should never have to buy a drive shaft. When the carrier bearing gets some plane to put a carrier bearing in it, when it needs U-joints, you know, check the friggin' drive line and make sure that, you know, that the U-joints are good. Okay. You know, so you're
just saying find a reputable shop that's going to go beyond looking at eye level. I'm going to consider what's eye level.
Right.
You're going to go the extra mile.
Because a lot of people want it pencil whipped. Like there's certain companies that need to have a 90-day inspection to stay. They're some franchisee. So they've got to have that 90-day inspection on every truck. Right? And all they care about is fixing the stuff that's on the 90-day, but we're going to make notes of other things we found. Doesn't red tag the track, doesn't keep it from, you know, passing the 90-day inspection or the annual, but these are things that need to be fixed. Okay. You know, like telling somebody, hey, the boot's starting to crack on your shifter, you know, big truck, right? No, we're fine. We got a call the other night, these guys are gagging because exhaust fumes are in the cab. Because now the boot's ripped, and the exhaust is directly under the flex pipe for the exhaust system, and you know, hot air goes up, and the shifter's above that, and these guys are dying. Well, So
I
now,
told you.
so now they pay for a mobile service call, and that part is not available. Had we ordered it when we told them, they would have it, but we couldn't order it. So now we have to order it. It's a 2-day back order. So my guy's out there trying to tape it together, to the crack, to seal the boot, and then install the boot back with duct tape so that these fumes don't come in and kill the crew.
Or if it's raining,
Right.
water coming through.
Right. So you can pay either way.
So as a fleet manager, take your time and find a reputable company wherever you may be.
Right.
And I'll put Darren's phone number up right now.
But there you go.
But don't try to be cheap on the back or the front end, because you're going to pay for it on the back end.
You do. You absolutely do. If you're a guy and you're a fleet manager, you don't understand about equipment, find somebody who does, that you can trust.
Let them inform you.
Right.
What it's all about.
And then there's an education to that. I always hate when we get a new fleet manager for somebody. I hate it because does he know? And then, because especially men, like women will just go, I don't know about that kind of stuff. Men, because we're men, we think we're supposed to know. Right? Like,
I don't need directions.
Right, exactly. Like, me and you have talked before. I'm the least techie guy ever. I got 3 screens in front of me and a great computer, but I barely know how to push the keys, right? There's certain things we know and certain things we don't know. A lot of people don't understand machinery, so find somebody that does. I'm telling you, it's going to save you in the end.
Okay. Oil analysis, you think it's necessary?
No, I do not.
Because you just need to change oil that much.
There you go.
Change it on time.
Yes, sir. I did it on one of my tow trucks in the beginning, and so we'd run the oil out 6,000-7,000 miles. 32 quarts of oil, have it tested. It still had 96 or 94% of its viscosity, and we were just running a basic Shell diesel oil, 1540. And so I'm thinking, I don't have a viscosity issue. So then you're doing this analysis of going, and you have to run a baseline. You have to do it for a long time because you have to see. I don't know what bearings and everything's made out of. You know how when they look at the metals that are in it, I'm not that smart, right?
You're looking at brass content,
exactly.
Copper content.
So as you see the brass content, so here's how many particles we had of brass that time, now we have this. So if you keep doing it over time, you say, okay, bearings are starting to fail at a greater rate because before we only had this much, and then this time we had this much, a little less. Now we have a lot more, so now we know a bearing's failing. Well, what are you going to do at that point? Anyways, you can tear the motor down? Probably not. You'll wait till the bearing starts knocking a little bit and you'll catch it and then you tow it in, and put a set of bearings in it before you have to put a crankshaft in it, right? But I think it's an incredible waste of time. But I'm sure there's certain guys that have huge fleets that found it to be great. I just found why do I need to do this? It didn't,
Then that brings us to the next question. Is there a difference using synthetic over regular?
I am not a proponent of synthetic oil at all, and I'm sure people give me lots of flack for that. Change your oil more often because the dirt's still in the oil. You know what I mean? Oil's black, right? When you put it in, it's not black. When it comes out, it's black, right? That means there's doots, if it's diesel, soot, carbon, whatever. Some sort of carbon base is in the oil. Maybe not dirt from the street, but there's some sort of carbon in there, right, or whatever that's causing the oil to turn black. So synthetic oil doesn't break down as fast. It's, obviously they've made it to, that it'll last longer and all these other things. But when I see the oil, it's still black, right? So it still has something in it. So the more often, and I proved it out, I never put an engine in a tow truck. You know what I mean? When we would take our engines apart, if we had to do an injector or something, all the inside of our engine looked silver. It was all silver. The metal looked silver. We take other people, you've taken people's stuff apart. Yeah. You take their valve cover off and it looks bronze. That's not the way it started. It started silver. If it's not painted, like a metal.
Well, there's mud in it?
Yeah. Well, not even mud. You know when it turns that bronze color?
Yeah, I know.
And it's discolored and it doesn't clean off. It's just been baked into the metal. So I'm a proponent of save your money for the synthetic. I don't know what it costs you. And just do your oil change. Like say if you do an oil change every 6,000 miles and you use synthetic, and it'll last. But think about this. Anybody who's telling you, any manufacturer who's telling you how long that oil, how to do the oil changes, they're basing on how long they want the engine to last. In other words, if they want this engine to last 250,000 miles, so you know how they drive all those cars around and they test all that stuff, and they change oil, they'll go, okay, if we change oil at these periods, we're going to get 250,000 miles. We believe that's enough because we'd like you to buy another car, or it's going to make the 10-year mark, and that's what we need. If you change your oil more often, it'll last longer. I've proved it. 20, 25 years being, I've proved that if Allison says the transmission will last 250,000 miles or whatever, if you service it every 50 or 60,000 miles, I serviced them every 30,000 miles, and when I would sell a truck, it would have over 450,000 miles on the original transmission. Don't tell me I had better drivers than everybody else. Right? I didn't.
You just did it more often.
We just did it more often.
So take the money you would save from doing synthetic.
Right.
Do it a regular oil change with regular non-synthetic oil and do it more often.
Yes, unless your car is under warranty, right? And the thing is, once it has synthetic in it, you probably should keep it going that way. But you know, a lot of people will have a maybe a little bit older motor and it had non-synthetic, and then they decided, well, I'm going to start putting synthetic in it to save it. Yes. That's when I would do it. But a lot of times when you start changing that, because I don't understand everything about oil, but you know, there's certain detergent levels and certain things like this. Like, say, when I would get an Allison transmission that they shipped to me with synthetic oil in it, I would immediately, this sounds crazy, right? Brand new truck, I would change the oil in it like 3 times to get all the synthetic out of it, so I didn't have to worry about that anymore, because I didn't want to contaminate anything, because I wasn't sure. Because a lot of this stuff I learned as I went. I didn't really know, but I wanted to make sure I could get on the service center world, and I didn't want to buy that that synthetic transmission fluid that was going to cost me all that money. I wanted all mine to be on the same thing, so I think I only ended up with 2 trucks that have this synthetic. And I'm sure there's lots of people out there who say you're an idiot. Maybe I am. Maybe I don't know what I'm talking about, but the proof is I did it for 25 years, and these are my results.
Okay.
So, you know,
you're going to stick by it.
I'm going to stick by it. I can't even convince my own son. My son has a Honda, and he's like, Dad, it's a little 4-cylinder, it takes this much oil, and we service his car every time. He's 28 years old, lives, you know, on his own, has his own job. He always tries to pay for the service. I'm not going to let him pay. He's my son. But he's like, my book says to change my oil every 5,000 miles. I said, okay. He goes, how often would you do? I said, 3. He goes, Dad, but that's old school, because, you know, motors used to be like that. And I go, that's fine. You can do whatever you want. That Ford pickup that you rode in today, that is just a gas motor, and you were saying it's in really good shape. I change the oil on that we change it every 3,000 miles. That's stupid, right? Throwing oil away, throwing filters away, sounds crazy, but I could potentially have that truck for the rest of my life.
You could.
I'll just buy another truck because I want one, not because I need one, because that truck will be in perfect shape when I get rid of it.
So then do you have any thoughts on AmsOil? Is that a big scam?
I don't know if it's a scam. I mean, it's got to be pretty good stuff. I mean, people don't keep buying them, and it's got to be something great about it. You know, I mean, I've had the pitch from AmsOil before, from all those oil companies. Here. They've come in here for sure. They're like, look, it'll do this, and you'll save this much in fuel. And I think some of those big fleet companies that have, you know, like 400 trucks, and you start saving pennies on the gallon for fuel.
Okay.
I could see them doing it. I mean, but then you got to go, okay, is the money that I'm saving in fuel worth the money I'm paying in oil? Because I mean, basically with the pitch I got, it's like, you can run this oil in your car forever. You just change out the filter, do this and do that and do this. Obviously, smarter people than me, engineers, people who know. I just know what I know, and I know what works, and I stuck with what I knew because I had great results. If I'm buying 1540 Shell oil, whatever it is for diesel, and I'm buying it by the barrel, and I'm buying it for an X number, and I'm good with that, and I know every time I dump it, it's 32 quarts oil in another truck and a friggin' $40, $50 filter. But you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It worked for me.
Okay.
And I worked on a lot of people's tow trucks, and they didn't service them. Like, I remember one guy owned 22 trucks, and I worked on his trucks. He goes, when's the last time you ever seen an international truck go past 250,000 miles on the same engine? I said, every truck I've ever owned.
Oh, he asked you?
He asked me.
Okay.
Because he was like, I'm going to buy a different kind of truck. So I think he bought a Peterbilt. Like, when Peterbilt started making medium duties, and I think they put a PACCAR engine in them or whatever. And, you know, he had problems with those trucks, too. But it's like, bro, you don't take care of them. You bring them to me when they're dead broke. You know what I mean? But he never had a truck that made it past 250,000 miles without needing an in-frame. You know?
Just beat it up.
You don't take care of it, man. It's just like anything else, man. Does anybody want to be put out in the middle of the desert and told you got to run as fast as you can for 4 hours without stopping? Nobody would want to do that, right? You'd want to have some water, maybe some good shoes, an air conditioner, right? Why would you do that to a vehicle? But I love machinery. I just do. I look at it like it's alive. And most people just think, put the key in it, turn it, floor it. When it blows up, it blows up. Right?
Screw it.
Right?
Screw it. Oh.
For sure.
What has your journey been with ATI?
It's been good. They've been good to us. I mean, me and my wife were talking about that the other day. That's kind of a long story too, so I'll try to make it brief. I don't know how many years ago we thought we would easily weather the recession. We had pretty good money set aside, and we thought, you know, we'll just keep all the tow trucks, keep doing our repair, we won't lay anybody off, and we can make it, you know, whatever. So the first year came, we lost tons of cash, and I'm like, no, I'm not selling off any assets. We're going to keep going. Like, when everybody's dead, we'll still be alive, you know, when the economy comes back around. So it had gotten so bad. I mean, it just got worse and worse. So finally we had to lay some people off, and we had to sell some trucks, and it was just getting worse and worse. And then my wife came to me one day and she says, we're out of money. There's nothing left. You know, so I'm working like crazy. I remember one time going in on a Saturday. by myself because I couldn't afford anybody to come in the mechanics. And I said, does it matter how hard I work? Does it matter? Because it seems like no matter what I do, we can't make enough money. Mm-hmm. You know, like say our magic number back then was 85,000. 85,000 was to cover, you know, for the month. Okay. And we'd make $84,000 in the hole. You know what I mean? And we get caught up and then we go back and it was just horrible. And I remember one day she's like, we can't keep doing this. We're going to lose everything. So she said, I want to go to this seminar, a place called ATI. I said, what does it cost? She says, like, I don't know, $500, I don't know, $200, whatever. I said, tell me how we can possibly afford that. She goes, I don't know, but I'm going. And I said, no. And I said, because I wouldn't want her to go without me. And so I said, well, you know, we got church on Sunday. She said, yeah. She goes, I'm going to go after church. So it's, you know, like 2 o'clock on. I said, well, you're not going by yourself. So I went with her. We write them the checks, money we don't even have. I mean, obviously the check was good, but it's money we don't even have. And the guy said, are you interested? And she's like, yeah, we're interested. And I thought, we're not interested. You know what I mean? And so
not buying it.
Yeah, he said, I'll come by because you submit your financials. You know, your last month's financials or whatever. I think it's a monthly financial thing.
So is this like a seminar? I mean, yeah. Like an introductory seminar kind of thing?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, so there's a bunch of shop owners there, whatever, and see whatever. And so the guy says, would you like me to stop by your shop? And she says, yeah. And I'm thinking, I don't want this guy there, you know. So he shows up on a Monday, and he takes a look at some things like that, and he comes to me and he says, because he was a shop owner too, and he says, you do too much heavy line work. And I just look at him, how could you possibly know that? He said, because your parts prices are real high, and I looked at your labor, and you do a lot of heavy line work. And I'm like, you're right. We do a lot of engines, a lot of transmissions, a lot of big ticket deals. He said, do you ever notice, though, you can make the ticket total can be really high, but how much do you get to keep? Where's your profit margin? He goes, how much money do you ever lose on a brake job? He says, I'm not saying throw away the high, you know, that kind of work.
Just bring it down.
But you need to spread it around. You can't have too much of that work. It'll bankrupt your shop. So I told my wife, I said, this guy knows what he's talking about. Like, when we talked together, I said, this guy knows. He knows something I don't know. And so we agreed to sign on with him, and it was expensive. It was 2.5 years, and I think it was $2,000 a year or something. I think by the end of the 2.5 years, you pay $50,000. So when you sign the contract, I said, this is great, but I can't even pay my vendors right now. And back then we were COD with people. We had lost all of our credit with our vendors. I mean, since all that stuff is back, you know, we have our full credit lines. We actually have bigger credit lines than we did before, but it was dark. But we had nowhere to go with it. And so, you know, so what it is so you're submitting these numbers through this portal of your weekly numbers. Mm-hmm. And you have a coach that sits down once a week. It's on a, you know, telephone, so he can look at the numbers, and he's moving the mouse and he's showing you all the stuff. And so we went back there and we went to a new owners meeting, and it was money we didn't have either. We went back to friggin' Maryland, you know, plane tickets and hotel room and whatever, and just sat around and got to talk to some people that were shop owners. Some people were coming back for the second time. Some people were in the program. Some people were starving just like we were. And so, you know, you're looking for answers. And so my coach kept telling me that I needed to make certain changes. And I really didn't want to listen. You know, I didn't like what he was telling me, and he just kept on me. And he said, Darren, isn't it kind of crazy that you pay us every month, whatever, you know, the fee you pay us, and I'm giving you this advice and you're not even trying to make the changes I'm asking you? He goes, why can't you just make some of the changes I'm asking you to make, and then if it doesn't work, move it back the way you had it. Just move it back exactly the way you had it. And I thought, okay. And I can remember telling Jimmy, you know, we go to the same church, and I remember telling him, if God so chose, Jimmy, because this is a big place. There were times we could play a football game out there. I mean, the yard was bare. I mean, we got a nice shop. I mean, big yard, concrete. Turn on the lights at night, we play a baseball game, or, you know, I mean, we had plenty of room. We could play Frisbee, we could do whatever. I said, you know, if God so chose, he'd fill up our yard, and people would be waiting. There'd be a line, you know what I mean? We wouldn't be able to get it all done. We just couldn't. I just don't understand why God won't do that right now. Like, why won't he just turn on the faucet, you know what I mean? And people would start showing up. And I was super stubborn, and I think when things started to change was the day that I decided that I was going to take advice from someone, because I could always figure it out. I've been doing this for a long time. I just work harder, or try something different or whatever, and it would work. But no matter what I tried before we hired ATI, I could not fix this. No matter how hard I tried, I could not make enough money to pay the bills. And so,
what were some of the key things they told you to do as a shop owner?
What he wanted me to teach, one of the main things he wanted, is for me to lock my toolbox And not, because what I would do all the time is I'd sit in the office, I would do my stuff, and then when I would hate it, I would go, I got to go help the guys. So I would pick a truck, pull it in my bay, go get my tools, and I would find peace because I love working on the stuff. And I would, in my mind, tell myself, well, if we're charging $85, I think back then we were charging $85 an hour. Well, if I work 10 hours for $85, I'm bringing the company in $850. But see, nobody's looking at this end, you know? And so what he was saying is you gotta know these numbers, which was the same advice my cousin who owns a very successful plumbing company is like, you gotta know the numbers, you gotta know where you're at. And so they started preaching stuff like that, and he's like, look, your margins need to be here. And I said, you don't understand. You guys are running a truck. What you guys are professionals at is small truck or light truck and car. Those same parameters don't apply to me. He goes, I understand they don't apply completely, but they still apply. Like when they're talking about the markup, like putting a price matrix together. So these low dollar prices, you're charging more for the part. And then, you know, the medium price, you're charging this. And then for the more expensive, you're charging this. But he was constantly, every week, he's like, you got to get your parts margin up. You got to get it up. And I'm thinking, you know, because if you grow up old, right? If you grow up and you remember when a starter costs $50 and you can put it in for 20 or whatever, right? Well, that starter should be $70. I'm just saying, like, remember whatever the money is for you. For me, $20 used to be a lot of money, right? So you have this conceived idea of what something should cost, and I did. And he's like, quit trying to figure out what you think it should cost and just put it in the computer, because we had all the programs we needed. Yeah. Just put what the box tells you it says. You know what I mean? Just let that be. Let that be whatever, you know, whatever it says it should be. Just let it be that. Don't discount it. Quit discounting it. You know what I mean? Just let it be what. So I remember on the first day, one of the girls, just because the way this would work here in our office, because we're all in different places, someone would create an estimate. They would send me an email that would say, review RO such and such. I would review it, check the prices, then they would send it, either email it to the customer, and then call them and go, hey, did you receive it? Do you want to discuss it? Blah, 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 blah. And we'd move on, right? We'd either get the job or not. She goes, I go, hey, I didn't have a chance to review so-and-so. And she goes, oh, I already emailed it. And I'm like, oh no. So I looked at it, I'm like, oh my God, those prices are way too high. We're never gonna get this job. And so then she's concerned because she thinks I'm mad at her. And I'm sitting here kind of fuming a little bit. And then she says to me about 5 minutes later, she goes, hey, I just got an email back, approved. And I'm like, okay. And what they try to explain to me is I can't charge what somebody down the street charges. In other words, if this guy owns his dirt and he owns, you know what I mean, he can charge less. Or he may not have bills that you have. He may not have this. You need to figure out what you need to make, and we're going to help you come up with that price of what you need to make. And believe me, I'm not rich. I live in a track home. You've seen my cars. They're decent. I mean, I got some cool cars, but I'm making it sound like I have multiple cars. But, you know, my wife drives a nice car. I do. But, you know, I live in a track home. We're not rich, but we're able to pay our bills. And so it was just that. So right now we're at a crossroads because after we finished the 2.5 years.
Are you done now? Is it over?
No, what we stayed on as a, what do you call that? When you graduate from a college and you are an alumni. So we stayed on, so it was $900 a month. So we've been staying on, and me and my wife were talking about that, like when she told him she wanted to quit, he sent back an email that was like, oh, I'm very disappointed to hear that, and blah, 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 and, you know, like notes of have we accomplished these things. Because I think we've been one of their better accounts, like when it shows, like they'll show you where you rank in ATI. Certain things I can never rank high because I'm a truck shop, heavy truck shop. Never can. But there's some places I'm like, out of 600 or 700 companies, I'm like top 6 in a category, and you know what I mean? Like, and he's helped us do that. And so we were talking to my wife, because she's very diligent and stuff. I said, will you continue to put in the numbers without him there? Because that's key, is to put the numbers in every week.
Okay.
How many hours your guys have? What was total sales for the week? What was the car count? You know, car truck count. So I think it ended up being a very good thing for us. I think we can stay on, and I think he taught me what I needed to know. But what I really think changed is, one, I never worked at another shop before. I never knew what the inner workings were. I was just a guy who could fix stuff.
Okay.
So say if I worked at another shop and I saw how they did it, then I'd be like, oh, that's kind of cool what they do, but I don't like that part. That's dishonest, that's honest, that's this, that. But I never did. I mean, in anything I ever did. I mean, the first tow truck I ever bought, I'd never driven a tow truck in my life. about a brand new tow truck, right? And when we started repairing stuff, people would say, hey, can you fix my truck? And I'd look at it and go, well, I'm sure I can fix it. I didn't even had no idea. I mean, I knew I could fix their truck, but I didn't know what to charge them. I didn't know any of those things. So I didn't have any of that background. So I think they helped them. But I think what really, and for people who aren't spiritual or don't believe in God, I hope this isn't offensive to them, but I think when I got humble, when I humbled out and said, I can't do this, God, because I always thought I was the smartest guy on the planet. There was nothing I couldn't do. Anything that happened to me that was good, my fault. Anything bad that happened to me, my fault. I took my lumps and I didn't care. But I think when I humbled out and said, I can't do this, I need help, somehow I believe God blessed that. So yeah, I think part of it was ATI, but part of it is a mindset of going, you don't know everything.
Okay.
So I don't know.
So they gave you that knowledge that you may not have had of the back end and the inner
Right.
workings on the office, parts, matrix.
And I didn't even want to know it. And imagine this guy's trying to help you, and he's even explaining to you, you're paying us every month. And I'm giving you these things that you should be doing.
You wouldn't even do it.
And next week I call you and I'm like, hey, did you implement this? No.
Nope.
Right. And he even told me, he goes, with the girls that work in the front, I mean, these girls are the best customer service people I've ever seen. Bertha, I don't know where she came from, but I think she worked in some office. She understands phone skills. She understands talking to the customer, and she rocks. I think Helen was like a general manager of a Jack in the Box. I know she worked there and she was in upper management. She understands customer service. I mean, to work fast food like that is really, really difficult. They're the best, right? But what he told me is, he goes, you have to give it to them. They're going to make mistakes.
Trust it to them.
They're going to make mistakes, and you're going to have to pay for them. And you're going to have to
you would recommend it to another shop owner, somebody on a guy out there, kind of like you, a shop owner, on the fence about it. Should I do this?
I would say yes. I would say yes, because there's no way I thought I was ever going to be able to pay him. Does that make sense?
Okay.
I couldn't even pay my bills. How am I going to pay an extra $2,000 a month? But here's the thing: listen early, not late. Like, you know what I mean? When they start teaching you stuff and telling you stuff, listen and make those changes early, because how much longer did I prolong the process because I was too stubborn? Because you know what I'd say? As soon as he'd get off the phone with us in the conference call, I'd be like, that crap's never going to work. I'm different. I got a different situation here. You know what I mean? You don't know who I am. You don't know what I'm capable of, right?
You understand my life?
Exactly.
You don't know me?
Exactly. Yeah, I'm the man.
Dog?
Yeah, you've never walked in my shoes, bro. You know?
You've never been here?
Right.
You don't know Darren.
Right. I'm special.
How long was it when you started, before you actually started listening to their advice? You're talking a 4-month lead time, 6 months?
You know, I'm so bad with time. I am, John, but I mean, it was months.
Maybe 6 months. 6 months you fighted it?
Maybe. And even still to this day, he'll tell me, look, your profit margin, he goes, look, in this month and this month and this month, your your parts margin was here. This is how many points you're at. This is where you really need to be. But now I've looked and it's dropped. Why did it drop? And I know that there was quite a few big invoices that I went in there and I reduced them because I felt like they were too high. And so he's like, if you need it to make these numbers that you need to make, this is what you have to do. And like helped us understand just so many things. Like he made us put lists together, like what are your computer costs per year to upgrade all the scanners and all the stuff and all the software and all that, put that together. Now put this and this and this together. You know what I mean? And then how much do you pay for bank charges? You know, like when we run credit cards and all that stuff? I don't know. I think it's probably like $2,000 or $3,000 a month that we spend just in running people's credit cards. That's what we get charged. Well, that's a fee. So if somebody paid you in a check or a cash, you're not paying that. So you start doing that, and then he figures out the jobs we do, and he's like, this is how much more you should be charging per ticket to recoup these costs. You don't look at stuff like that.
All the little stuff.
Well, because like in California, you can't put anything down as miscellaneous. Like you cannot put, it's illegal in California to put shop supplies. You can't charge people for shop supplies. You have to charge them for every single thing. You can't charge them for a shop towel. You can charge them for, like, you can't just put hardware or something. You got to list the nuts and bolts. You know what I mean? You have to list everything. And so it's like you have to put that stuff on your invoice. Like we have to clean certain things, and we get hit hard for the recycled water, you know, greasy, oily water. We weren't charging for that. We're getting hit every month for $900 in recycled water fees.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And that was
environmental fees.
Okay, so he had gone through and he had looked at just, you know, like just different numbers of things, like, you know, you have your fixed cost. So, you know, I'm on salary. I don't get paid any more, any less. Doesn't matter how many hours I work, my wife too. You know, obviously the employees, they get paid based on, you know, hours they work. But your fixed costs, like your rent and all that other stuff, stays. But then things change to fixed cost. Like fixed costs, like say you buy another laptop or there's another support item or whatever.
Okay.
So now that's a fixed cost, and that starts to go up. Or we hired a guy to do outside sales, so that the fixed cost goes up again. So he's constantly looking at those things from ATI and goes, okay, so we're at the end of this year, so your fixed cost is moved up to here. You know what I mean? And kind of here's your numbers. Where do you see yourself? So it helps us forecast for the next year. Where do you want to be? How much money would you like to make? When do you want to be able to retire? Certain things like that. So if you're
young, they're looking 5 years, 10 years down the road.
I can't see me being out of here in 10 years. I need something to do. But yeah, just trying to help you understand that. So if you're a young shop owner, I think it is. I think so many of us are gifted with the ability to fix stuff. We just have mechanical minds. And there's probably a lot of guys that are like me, just a younger version. Get some help. Just because you're really smart, you know how to fix a diesel engine like nobody can do, doesn't mean you're a good businessman. I told you, all the time, how many times you heard me tell me this? I'm a horrible businessman. I'm just not good at it. I just like fixing stuff,
So if you need help, get it. And ATI is definitely a company
they were
partnering with that can help somebody.
They were good to us, but you must be humble. You have to lay yourself there and go, help me. And you have to listen. Don't be stubborn like I was.
Okay. Darren, thank you.
Thanks, John.
As always.